Imagine the year is 2035. You're watching a geopolitical crisis escalate in a volatile region. Tensions are at a boiling point. Suddenly, an entire nation goes dark. Not from a missile strike, not from a massive cyber attack originating from a rival state, but from something far cleaner, far more absolute. Its connection to the global network, its financial markets, its media, its military's command and control is severed in an instant. The digital borders have slammed shut, creating a virtual island, isolated and deafened. The architect of this unprecedented act of power isn't a government or a military alliance. It's a single American company, SpaceX. By 2035, its Starlink constellation has evolved far beyond a novel way to get internet in remote areas. It has become the central nervous system of the global digital economy and the ultimate high ground of modern warfare, a utility as essential as electricity or water. This network, ultimately controlled by the vision and the whims of one man, Elon Musk, holds the unilateral power to grant or deny access to the 21st century itself. What you're about to hear is not a dystopian fantasy. It is a data-driven forecast based on real technology and escalating geopolitical rivalries. This is the story of how, by 2035, the world's most powerful weapon won't be a nuclear warhead, but rather the kill switch for the planet's internet. And the power to flip that switch rests not in the White House or the Kremlin, but in the hands of a private citizen. The future we described isn't built on speculation. It's built on the hard lessons learned from the battlefields of today. The proving ground was Ukraine. When the conflict began, Russia's sophisticated electronic warfare was expected to cripple Ukrainian communications within hours. It didn't happen. The primary reason was the rapid deployment of thousands of Starlink terminals by Elon Musk's SpaceX. As a groundbreaking report from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, the CSIS, titled "The First Space War," detailed, Starlink provided a resilient, decentralized communications backbone that the Ukrainian military desperately needed. It allowed frontline troops to coordinate artillery, pilots to receive real-time intelligence, and drone operators to guide their weapons to targets with lethal precision. In essence, a commercial internet service became a decisive military asset overnight, a fact that was not lost on the U.S. Department of Defense at the Pentagon, which quickly moved to formalize its relationship with SpaceX. The world watched as a private company demonstrated the power to sustain a nation's war effort, a role historically reserved for sovereign states. And you can be sure the world's other superpowers were taking detailed notes. In Beijing, Starlink's success in Ukraine was viewed as a strategic nightmare, demonstrating a critical dependence on American technology. As documented by Reuters, the People's Republic of China immediately accelerated its own monumental project, codenamed Guowang, or National Network. This is not just a commercial competitor. It is a state-funded, state-controlled strategic imperative to deploy a 13,000-satellite constellation. Its goal is twofold. First, to break the impending Starlink monopoly and ensure its own military and civil communications can never be throttled by the West. And second, to export its system to allied nations, creating a competing digital bloc. This is the new technological Cold War, fought in low Earth orbit. But the weaponization of space isn't just about military and political dominance. It's about controlling the future of the global economy. An analysis highlighted by the World Economic Forum presents a staggering fact. Nearly 3 billion people remain offline, representing a vast, untapped economic frontier. For countless communities in Africa, South America, and rural Asia, expensive terrestrial infrastructure is a non-starter. Starlink and its future competitors are the only realistic path to joining the global digital economy. But this presents a dangerous dependency. By becoming the sole source provider of internet for a developing nation, SpaceX effectively holds the master key to their economic future, their banking, their education, their commerce. They are handing over the control of a fundamental utility to a foreign company, and by extension, to one man, creating a new, subtle form of technological colonialism. The evidence is clear. Starlink is already a proven military tool. It has already ignited a geopolitical space race, and it is already positioning itself as the gatekeeper of the 21st century economy. The foundations for 2035 are being laid right now. So, how do we get from the present day to this high stakes future of 2035? The path is a logical, escalating chain of events built upon the foundations we've just discussed. Picture the world a decade from now. The Starlink constellation is no longer a novelty, it is a global behemoth. With over 70,000 satellites in orbit, it has achieved near total dominance in the satellite internet market. The People's Republic of China's Guowang network is operational, but significantly smaller, primarily serving its own interests and those of its allies under the Belt and Road Initiative. The European Union's sovereign constellation, IRIS², is still in its final stages of deployment, a step behind. Critically, over 100 developing nations have become deeply structurally dependent on Starlink for everything from commerce and education to basic governance. The stage is set. The flashpoint, as is so often the case, is a dispute over resources in a contested territory. Let's say a strategic shipping lane in the Arctic, newly opened by climate change. A regional power, backed by China and Russia, makes an aggressive move. The United States, citing international law and treaty obligations, responds. The crisis escalates. This is where the world sees the weapon in its true form. The U.S. Department of Defense, through Space Force, activates its proprietary access to the Starshield network. This isn't the commercial Starlink, it's the militarized, encrypted, stealth version. For U.S. forces and their allies in the region, it's a God mode switch. They gain an unbreakable, unjammable, high-bandwidth communications network that provides a decisive intelligence and operational advantage. Drones relay crystal-clear 8K video from the edge of space. Commanders share holographic battlefield maps in real time. But Starshield is both a sword and a shield. Simultaneously, using sophisticated electronic warfare payloads integrated into the network, the U.S. selectively denies or degrades Starlink access to the adversary's forces within the conflict zone. Their drones fall blind from the sky. Their ships' command systems go silent. It is a swift, brutally efficient demonstration of digital dominance, a tactical masterpiece that leaves their opponents paralyzed. But this move, intended to de-escalate the crisis through technological superiority, does the exact opposite. For the People's Republic of China and Russia's Roscosmos, this is the ultimate red line. They witness an American corporation, at the behest of the Pentagon, unilaterally deciding who gets to use the infrastructure of the 21st century in a conflict. They cannot and will not allow this precedent to stand. Their response is coordinated and catastrophic. First comes the electronic assault. From ground stations in the Gobi Desert and Kaliningrad, they unleash powerful, wide-beam jamming signals, targeting not the conflict zone, but the broader commercial Starlink network over Europe and Asia. Their goal is to create chaos, to show the world and the financial markets that the system is vulnerable. Then comes the kinetic strike. In a shocking escalation that violates decades of unspoken rules, a Chinese ASAT, or anti-satellite missile, launches from a mobile platform. Its target, a single plane of Starlink satellites. The impact is a silent, glittering explosion in the void, shredding a dozen satellites into tens of thousands of pieces of lethal shrapnel. The message is brutally clear. Your assets are not safe. The global fallout is immediate. The kinetic strike creates a cascading debris field, a Kessler syndrome event in miniature that threatens every satellite in low Earth orbit, including China's own. The space around our planet is suddenly a minefield. The electronic attack, combined with the loss of satellites, causes intermittent outages in the global Starlink network. Stock markets flicker. Automated shipping and global logistics, now deeply reliant on Starlink, are thrown into disarray. For the first time in a generation, the internet, for hundreds of millions of people, is no longer a certainty. The European Union, caught in the middle, faces a terrifying choice. Their reliance on a US-based system has become a critical vulnerability, pulling them into a conflict they want no part of. In an emergency session in Brussels, they declared digital neutrality, accelerating the full activation of their own sovereign constellation and walling it off from the conflict. A digital iron curtain begins to descend. But the most tragic victims are not the great powers. They are the developing nations who built their futures on the promise of Starlink. For a nation in, say, East Africa, the network disruption is an apocalypse. Their digital payment systems, the backbone of their modern economy, collapse. Their e-government services and healthcare networks go offline. Their farmers can't get weather data. Their students can't access online classes. They are the completely forgotten civilian casualties of a war fought in orbit, facing total economic and social collapse because of a great power conflict thousands of miles away. And in the midst of this global chaos, the world waits. The White House issues statements. The Kremlin and Beijing issue counter-statements. But everyone is really waiting for the response from one man, Elon Musk. Does he use SpaceX's formidable capabilities to retaliate, to escalate the conflict space? Or does he try to de-escalate, to find a truce? The fate of the global internet, the stability of the world economy, rests on the judgment of a CEO. The power of a sovereign state has been fully and terrifyingly privatized. The scenario we've just walked through is not inevitable, but it is a deeply plausible extension of the path we are on today. The comfortable lines that once separated private enterprise from national security and commercial innovation from instruments of war are being systematically erased. We are outsourcing critical state functions, our global communications, our battlefield intelligence, our economic resilience, to private corporations who are, by their very nature, not accountable to citizens, but to their shareholders and the vision of their singular powerful leaders. A man like Elon Musk is no longer just a CEO. He is the architect of a new kind of power, a techno-sovereign individual whose decisions can have consequences on a global scale, rivaling those of entire nations. This is the new reality. This is the new definition of sovereignty in the 21st century. What does it truly mean for a country to be independent in 2035? Is a nation genuinely sovereign if its digital backbone, its connection to the world, can be severed by a foreign company? Is the price of progress a permanent dependency on a handful of tech titans who operate beyond the traditional boundaries of international law? We have raced to embrace the convenience and power of these new technologies, but we have failed to ask the most important questions. Who governs the governors? When the infrastructure of the world is privately owned, who ensures it is used for the good of the world? We don't offer you a solution. We offer you a warning. The future of global power is being written now, not in the halls of the United Nations, but in the server farms of SpaceX and the boardrooms of Silicon Valley. So we leave you with this unsettling question, a question your children may one day have to face in a moment of crisis. Think carefully. Would you rather have your nation's fate depend on a geopolitical weapon controlled by a foreign government or one controlled by a private tech billionaire like Elon Musk? There may be no right answer. This is a prophecy from AI. Be prepared.